When Dennis Dodd speaks, we listen. What did CBS's ace reporter have to say in an interview yesterday with the Cover 3 podcast guys? He talked about the frontrunners for Big 12 expansion. He discussed Pac-12 schools waiting out for a television contract. What is Colorado's value? Where do Group of Five schools go? College football super leagues. All of these things and more he touched on. We'll hit it all on Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today it is the 20th of April, 2023. Happy 420 to all of you out there who acknowledge this holiday for many of you all out there. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Want to thank you all again for helping us get to 4,000 subscribers. The chase for 5,000 now begins. 4,000 major milestone, yes, but 5,000 halfway to 10K is a big one. And I hope you guys, if you are just finding this channel, please subscribe. We discuss conference realignment. We discuss television contracts. We discuss the future of the Big 12. We talk football. We talk basketball. All of those things. Everything you all want to know. 5+ days a week here of Locked On Big 12. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. If you guys cannot listen or watch the show, rather, you may listen on any podcast platform. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, all of those places and more. 5-star review, please, and let us know. Leave a comment there as well, and leave a comment on the video. So thank you all who brought this up to my attention yesterday. Dennis Dodd. So I'm not sure about you guys, but I use Spotify. On my Spotify feed, I guess Cover 3 kind of got cycled out for like my favorite podcast at this point in time. I'm subscribed, but really I'm seeing a lot more of the stuff, a lot of NBA stuff right now because that's in season. Some of the college basketball stuff still appearing right now because that's kind of fading out of season right now, and some of the other things that I follow as well. But I'm a big Cover 3 listener. Love that show. They had Dennis on, and you all know, if you guys listen to this show, if you're new to it, let you all know, Dennis Dodd's one of the folks that we trust the most when it comes to conference realignment, when it comes to Big 12 expansion, when it comes to Pac-12 situation as well. Dennis is very plugged in, especially in Big 12 circles. And so if you all have not listened to the interview yet, go on, listen to the Cover 3 podcast from yesterday. Dennis hits on a whole lot. Danny Canella's there with them, who's been on this show before. Tom Fernelli, and then Chip Patterson. They talk with Dennis, who they know very well because he's one of their CBS colleagues. So the things that really stuck out to me, are a lot of our speculation as of late has been about who are the front runners to join the Big 12 conference if they were to expand. And let's begin there. Dennis basically said it. He said, yeah, Colorado and Arizona, those are the two schools that are kind of your front runners right now to join the Big 12 conference if the Big 12 were to expand. Now, it's kind of contingent on point number 2 here. He's saying the Pac-12 schools are waiting it out. They've told Brett Yormark that. Brett Yormark has said apparently that, the standing offer some of these schools have is not going to be there forever. We've mentioned that before, but I think it's worth touching on later on in the show. But that's not surprising, right? I think for a lot of us, Arizona and Arizona State started off as a tandem that made sense. Now, if Arizona were to go alongside the Colorado Buffaloes, I think that Arizona State would join them just because it naturally makes sense, right? I would feel more confident that if Arizona and Colorado left in Arizona State joining them than I would right now in Utah. And that is not based off anything inside, just off the public comments that we've seen. There's been a bit more resistance in the Utah circles. I'm not sure if it is a BYU is their first type deal. We don't want to be following them type deal. I'm not sure really what the situation is there with that. I know some folks have felt like the Utah fans have been a little bit disrespectful to the Big 12. Whatever it is, it feels like they're not a school that's out there trending right now. And once again, I brought this up a bunch, but on the football side of things, it makes a lot of sense because they're having so much success right now in actually football and basketball. The Pac-12 is kind of a conference that football, I'm not saying it's easier to win, but they're doing a great job right now. They've won the last 2. They beat Oregon twice in 2021. They beat USC twice in 2022. And I know USC is leaving, but still you're beating programs that were ahead of you are ahead of you in a lot of categories for a long time. You're doing it with good talent. You're doing it with good coaching. You're doing it with good quarterback play. And you've got a lot of playmakers who are making some of their playmakers look silly, and you're beating them up front in some of these games. So you're doing a lot of the things that you want to do to beat programs that are a level up from you, ostensibly back-to-back Rose Bowls for a school that was added to the conference kind of in their last round of additions. It's impressive. And so I think you understand why they'd want to stay. Also, good God, the basketball for them eventually would get better, but the basketball for them it would take some time, right? They kind of get rolled a little bit in the Big 12. They were an average, I guess maybe even above average. I forgot where they finished, but above average basketball team in the Pac. I don't really think they do very well in the Big 12 this year. I think it's pretty fair to say, but it feels like they're further off. Colorado, because they left, I think some folks are like, why would they come back? But I don't think that's a reason they wouldn't come back. This is just about the changing tides of the sport is what makes sense. And I think the fact they've been there before is a certain level of comfort with the league. And I also think for them, their priorities right now as a football program are very clear. Visibility, turning this thing around, getting that positive energy going. And sure, the Pac-12 is an easier conference maybe to win in, but the visibility portion of this is not guaranteed with the Pac right now because we don't know where they're heading. And also, they've got to capitalize on the amount of time that they've got Deion Sanders. Dennis mentioned this. Hey, there are some folks out there who think that Deion kind of only wants to hang around to see his kids graduate. We're both on the team. Kids graduate and see his kids play. Maybe he wants to go on and do something else, maybe even not coaching related, Dennis said, afterwards. So you've got to maximize that window, and there's no guarantee the Pac-12 is going to help you maximize the visibility window of having a Deion Sanders there, because once Deion leaves, I think too, they might have a natural replacement there depending on how well things go. That's going to be totally up to the relationship between Sean Lewis and the offensive coordinator and Deion Sanders. But I love Sean Lewis. I think a lot of folks do. Cover 3 guys. I know they like him too. I think there could be a natural, kind of succession right there if that thing goes pretty well. So I think Colorado knows they've got to maximize, and it's going to be in a conference they're familiar with. And I think for them, basketball-wise, they're not all the way there, but I think they start kind of rallying. They'll take their lumps, like a lot of schools would. But the job getting Colorado basketball back to the tournament, a little bit easier than Utah basketball, it feels like at this point in time. Just kind of my read on the entire thing. Arizona, they are the most natural fit of all of this. I know you might say, well, Colorado is in the conference. Yeah, but Arizona has shown the desire. I think attitude-wise, they fit in because in as many state schools as there are, they're not one that I think puffs out their chest and beats the chest as much academically as some of the other schools might do. I know some folks who went to Arizona. They had a great education. It's not saying it's a bad school. Once again, you all have heard the show. If you have heard me before, so I went to a big state school. I believe in big state schools education. I'm not saying they're better than anybody else, but I think education is what you make it a lot of times. And a lot of these schools offer great educations. So Arizona and even their president has mentioned it too. They are much more receptive to the idea of joining the Big 12 than some of these other teams are. I think Colorado's silence has kind of been the indicator, and some of the reporting has been the indicator. Andrew Marchand, Dennis Dodd. And also, we're going to have Andrew Marchand on next week. He told me he might have some news there. Did not say about what, but he said he might have some news for us. Probably something that he's going to have recently reported, but he might have some information next week. Not saying he didn't, sure, but he says things could develop. So we'll obviously keep our eye on Andrew Marchand's social media accounts and what he has to say. Hopefully we can get him next week on the show. But continuing on, Arizona just makes so much sense. And what wouldn't make sense is that they came in no ASU, right? I think it feels like you want both of them kind of coming over, migrating together. Just makes a lot of sense. I think that would eventually be what you get. I don't think those two would just split, but I think, the one challenge would be Arizona feels like the one that's got to make the overture, say, hey, ASU, come with us and we'll be the first ones to go. And nobody really wants to be first. This gets to point number 2 about the Pac-12 teams waiting. We'll get to that right after this word from our sponsors at FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook is the number 1 sportsbook in America. As you are all watching this, either NBA games have happened or NBA games are happening. You guys can bet on them. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Pound for pound, the best interface in all of sports wagering apps. I've been on sports wagering apps like Bovada that are international. I've been on the ones here in Arkansas. We've got Oaklawn, Bet Saracen, things like that. National ones like DraftKings. Guys, FanDuel is the best. FanDuel is the best that you will find anywhere interface-wise. It is sleek, it is clean, it is fast. Payouts, deposits, easy. Payouts, fast. The contact, the customer support, very good. They got longer lines for them, which happens because so many people use them, but they are to let you know where you stand and where you are in line, things like that. So FanDuel.com/lockedon. They will help you all get your first bet reimbursed up to $1,000 in bonus bets if it does not hit. So FanDuel.com/lockedon today when you all sign up for that. All right, so the timeline. Pac-12 schools are waiting. I've been saying this a bunch. We're going to keep saying it. Should they be? I don't know. I'm actually, and this is not a pro Big 12 point, but or I guess you could say it is. But to me, because we've covered it so much, and I'm not saying it's folly after folly after folly, but it's been difficulty after difficulty after difficulty. And the best week the Pac-12 had when their presidents came out and talked about, hey, we're together, we're unified, we want to be in this thing together, we want to all go together. That the show of unity was shortly after kind of undercut by some of the reporting that we saw, I guess now 2 weeks ago from Stuart Mandel and Max Olson, where it said the optimism, they were overly optimistic, right? And the deadline's been pushed back, and now the CW is involved in this conversation. And so I thought personally, to me, how much do you want to put up with? I don't think at this point in time it's confidence in George Kliavkoff that he is this amazing leader to get the job done. I think it is a desire to not leave the Pac-12 because it's a big thing to do. It's a desire to stay with the other schools that you have been with and not make a change. And also to Jim Williams' point that he made the other day, this is part 3 here, just because they're remaining there now does not mean they want to leave. For example, and I don't know this to be true, but let's just put this theory out there. If you are President Robert, I always forget his name, over at Arizona, and you want to leave the league, your best case, and I think they already have a case now to leave, but if you get the numbers and they are not satisfactory, then you saying, you know what, it's time for us to bail, it's time for us to go, time for us to leave. We saw the deal, it was insufficient. Then that gives you the best explanation. Some folks believe that, hey, they might not have the full scope at this point, and so maybe leaving is premature. I'm not there. I'm a believer that they're at the point now where they have the out. They have the necessary information that they could say, we want to leave, and it could be very well justified. But, you could also say, hey, look, Arizona wants to go to the Big 12. We have faith that Brett Yormark will have a standing offer for us if we want to leave and join them. And so we're going to wait and just hope that in good faith, Brett Yormark is there waiting for us with the offer. If this thing doesn't work, just so we can dot our I's and cross our T's and say we did everything we could to make sure we give the Pac-12 a chance. And look, if they come up with, if Arizona right now believes, hey, we're probably going to the Big 12, and Brett Yormark, rather George Kliavkoff makes them an offer that makes a lot of sense, good for them. Good for them for keeping the options open and finding something that works for them. Guys, I would say the same thing about the Big 12 schools, right? Like, hey, if Kansas State wanted to leave, like Kansas State's always my first example, but K-State wanted to leave, Iowa State wanted to leave, and they said, you know what, we're going to give, let's just say that Baylor got an offer from the ACC, right? And they think they want to go because the ACC wants to get into Texas, TCU, whatever you want to pick. And they say, you know what, we're going to give Brett Yormark a chance. And Brett Yormark makes the offer. They like it. Great. Good for them, man. They have got the offer they wanted. That was good enough for them. They want to stay and keep their tradition and culture in the league they're currently in. That's fine with me. And I know TCU's culture is not, deeply rooted in this league, but you all get what I'm saying here. Good for them. Good for them for doing that. That's what you want to see. You want to see these schools, standing by it, not just throwing stuff to the wind. I mean, I think that's what got us in the spot in the first place. So, the big point here is they're waiting, and it makes sense that they are. You want to make sure that you've got all of your ducks in a row, all the possible offers, and, you can explain to everybody, look, there's fans on all these places that want to remain. Hey, look, we gave it all we could. So I think it makes sense there. Let's go to the plan B part of all of this. So the Big 12's plan B. We're going to talk more about this, but and I am not done a great job of this because it's just hard to maintain all of these things. But group of 5 schools, they're not going to get full shares. And so I think, while I think I've overvalued San Diego State. I really think I have. Dennis made a great point today on the Cover 3 saying, look, they have gotten $4 million a year from the Mountain West Conference. That's what they get television wise. They would be happy to get 15. They'd be happy to get 20. I mean, that'd be great for them. While their programs kind of deserve a Power 5 setting, if you will, and also their facilities maybe, and also their, the place where they are in San Diego, that is not likely. And this is to the Big 12's advantage right now, according to Dennis. And I think also as well, I agree with this too. Look, if you are San Diego State, which league makes more sense for you? The Pac-12, right? Because they are closer to you. The travel expenses will not nearly be as significant as they are if you go to the Big 12. All the travel distances, you just travel time, your athletes, all those kind of things, not nearly significant as it is in the Big 12. That being said, though, look, who is in a better position right now? And this kind of goes with all these teams we're talking about, but the Big 12 is a more secure situation right now than the Pac-12 is. So it makes sense that, you can't just make a TV deal and add the school unless it's built into the TV deal. It's not going to happen simultaneously unless it's built into the television deal. And I think they're having such a tough time right now getting the 10 schools there. And look, if the holdup is conference adding more schools and we learn about it later down the line, sure, whatever. But it does not sound like that's the holdup right now. And so if they're struggling to just get a deal, adding additional schools is challenging too. Now they might need to get more inventory, the Pac-12 that is. But it just seems like to me that it's a difficult task to do, even though it makes a lot of sense for San Diego State to go to the Pac-12. And if they get a TV deal, I'm pretty confident that you're going to see San Diego State go to that league. But the one part of this that I don't think we've fleshed out and played out, because who knows what happens, is if schools leave the Pac-12, San Diego State might have an entrance into whatever the zombie Pac-12 is, but is that worth it? And, what's the money like? And also, it would be more worth it to jump to the Big 12, because as much as we like Arizona, as much as we like Arizona State, as much as we like Colorado, and, not sure you all love Utah right now, but as much as everybody loves Utah, they are not in California. And California is that it's kind of the Great West, that frontier, if you will. They want to go all the way west. California, San Diego is all the way west. It's a major American city. And it adds something, in that fourth time zone, wall to wall, all day football, guarantees it. No late starts. You can play games there, and it kind of opens you up there, and you'll see what happens from there in that West Coast time zone, right? It kind of just it kicks that door down. And so that is why, if you are San Diego State, they are, I think, out of all of the G5 programs that we're talking about right now, their football and basketball programs are in a spot where, especially because of the way basketball has played last year, they're in a tandem where it's like, all right, facilities plus success plus where they're located, they're just the next logical one to make the step. I know folks in Memphis feel like they are, but it does not feel like that way. I know folks at UConn think they are. That football program is not there enough. They're an independent football program. They are not all the way there yet. San Diego State is one that makes sense on both fronts. And so I'm really curious as to see what television companies value San Diego State as, because of, and look, what their value is right now might not be a fair valuation. We have ESPN cutting costs. We've got ESPN, another company, trying to squeeze the Pac-12, right, and get the best possible deal, saying we don't necessarily need this for as much as you all want it for. So maybe their value is not going to be fully fleshed out when they join a league. But I really do think that they're bound for a league. It's just a matter of which one. And I think they're willing to take, whatever it is, because whatever it is will be an upgrade over what they currently have. Once again, on the pro rata part of all this, the pro rata from ESPN, it sounds like, and Dennis Dodd even kind of backtracked on this, but it sounds like the pro rata, which everybody believes is there at least, is ESPN's guaranteed if Power 5 school joins, they will pay their share. And ESPN is, over 60% of the contract for the Big 12. So this is where the game of, all right, how much are you going to pay us for them? How long does it take for them to become a full member? And what do they value that at? So all of that. But G5 schools are on the table. You all know me. And what I feel is not necessarily what's happening, but I am not a believer in just adding as many schools as possible because you think it makes sense. I'm for adding as many like Power 5 brands as possible because I think we saw at TCU last year, especially in a league like this, even with Texas and OU in it. These schools have the potential to go on and make runs and go and play in the college football playoff. And Oklahoma State, guys, was close to doing the same thing last year. I mean, once again, I go back to the Iowa State game. Like, I don't think Presley was down. And if he's not down, they might get on the field and score and win that game. And, they might be heading to and once again, they're 1 inch away from the Big 12 championship. They didn't win it. But these schools, TCU proved it this year, like they can go and beat the Michigans of the world. Not saying they can beat Georgia, not saying they beat Ohio State, not saying they beat Alabama, but they can go and have success. And if you acquire enough brands that can have that kind of success, you are a valuable part of the conversation. And another part of this conversation Dennis brought up was a super league. And if you have just having brands does not help you. Having like actual Power 5 brands that we know and that people associate, it'd be weird if Arizona was not involved. It'd be weird if Colorado was not involved. It would be weird if a Utah was not involved. It'd be weird if a Baylor, a TCU, and Oklahoma State is not involved. Like, think about that. Think about the Big Ten and the SEC breaking away. And, I'll throw my program under the bus here. I always like to, you guys use Missouri all the time. Here's what I'll do here. Oklahoma State is a better football program than Missouri. Full stop. Oklahoma State, a better football program than Missouri, right? Imagine like Missouri is getting to play, in this college football super league, and Oklahoma State's left out. Or even give it a further example. I know Vanderbilt's there to like kind of boost the profile. So let's not use Vandy. Let's use somebody in the in the Big Ten. Maryland gets a chance, but Oklahoma State does not. Rutgers is in the big leagues, but TCU played national championship is not. That's why the acquisition of brands like this are important, right? Think about Utah's not involved. They just played in the last 2 Rose Bowls, and hey, they beat teams like USC and Oregon twice to get there. So the acquisition of meaningful brands is what matters. Cities matter, but the Big 12 is spreading the map now. I don't know if just pure acquisitions is the way to go. Maybe to get in all the time zones, sure, but I'm not just going to start adding, as much as some of you folks think we should, just start adding a bunch of schools, like just because. You can go all 16, 20 teams. I'm adding the schools that are power brands that make sense to add. If you wanted to throw Oregon State and Washington State in there, sure you could, right? They've had really nice seasons in the past 10 years or so. But I'm more focusing on Arizona and Arizona State and Colorado and Utah. There's some tradition there. I know Arizona State have not been as good recently, but like they put guys in the NFL. It looks like ASU has gotten themselves a pretty decent coach, Kenny Dillingham. I think Jed Fish is turning things around in Arizona. Like, these schools have a chance, and especially in league like the Big 12, it cycles things around. College Game Day, the biggest show in town, went to a Big 12 game, TCU versus Kansas last year, because of that. Acquiring these brands that have some meaningful history and tradition, whether it's basketball or not. And like, Arizona is effectively a basketball version of or they are an Arizona version of Kansas, right? Part of the allure, the charm of going to that Kansas TCU game for College Game Day is the fact that, KU's a basketball school, and we're going to go see a basketball school have, take on TCU, another ranked team. Let's see how they do. And it's a great story and everything. Arizona's kind of the same way. And that that stuff means something. So acquiring the meaningful brands is kind of the plan here. And as much as there are, and Dennis mentions this, a lot of options out there, a lot of schools have contacted the Big 12 themselves. And any G5 edition, guys, nobody's getting a full share, even close to a full share. It's going to be a partial share, and we'll see for how long. We're going to wrap this up on something that I have brought up a bunch, and I want to maintain this as we go forward, guys. I want to keep this idea in your all's heads. It's not some of these schools, like I get the Arizona, Colorado, what's the gap, how much money we make Pac-12, how much money we make in Big 12. It is about long-term security. You cannot guarantee me Oregon and Washington are going to remain in the Pac-12. As programs that have the rich tradition that they do, they believe they should be competing. And if they suffer the gap too long, and they don't have to, it feels like eventually some power conference would add them, they should leave. And if you are thinking about, okay, well, it's tough to get a big television deal here. Visibility is an issue. Let's go to the Big 12. We know it's ESPN. We know it's Fox. And after that, there is another television deal coming up for the Big 12 in 2030. If you weaken the Pac-12, it is a less desirable television product, right? And so you might, you might give a portion of your programming to ESPN because ESPN wants a lot of your early games. They want some of your prime games. They want some of your late games, right? So they take number one priority. And I think it makes a lot of sense because the Big 12, if they expanded with these teams, could offer games in all the time slots you wanted, right? Fox might want a few games to fill out their Saturdays. What if an NBC does? What if a CBS does? What if now we start talking about the streamers want to get involved? When you get that many teams in your conference and can offer that many games, you are now very attractive. And also the Pac-12 has been hit hard with schools leaving. They only offer games in certain time slots. They are not offering early games. You are a more attractive option because you are this, you are the Tetris pieces that finish off what is a Saturday college football schedule for all of these leagues. And also not just finish off, you're going to have some big games that are featured as well. Baylor, Oklahoma State on Fox, Baylor, TCU on Fox, TCU, Texas Tech on Fox, right? All of these games happen on Fox. So you're providing these matchups that don't just fill out, but are on ABCs, on Foxes, on ESPN, ESPN2s at all different times of the day. That is the ultimate value. It's not just about this television contract. And if you listen to the article, Tom Fornelli says, is it really worth it doing it? And I don't expect Tom to think about the next television contract in 2030. It's not Tom's job. But our job is, my job is to think about that. And I've always been steadfast about that next television contract being so meaningful because when you take from the Pac-12, you are now the third game in town, right? The Big Ten, the SEC. Then you have the ACC locked until 2036, a week in Pac-12. Who's next up? The Big 12. And the Big 12 will offer that wire-to-wire, wall-to-wall, 12-to-12 football programming for the big networks, for the new streamers, for the secondary networks, all of it. They offer it all. And that's what's valuable about this. So I think that's the answer to any question about, if there's not a big enough gap. Yeah, I understand, sure, if it's within $6 million, whatever it is, if it's less than, $26 million, what's the difference between Pac-12 and Big 12 at $5 million? It's worth the stay. Sure, it is. But also think about down the line. You're not thinking about the $4 or $5 million now. Think about all the years ahead of time where you're making the money closer to what you want to make or even more maybe, depending on the success of the league. That will do it for today's show. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at LOBig12. You guys can find me at @JoshNeighbors_personally. Make sure you all subscribe to the channel. Appreciate when you guys do on the road to 5K now. Thank you all for subscribing if you have already. Till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe.